Yo, comrades, here we go. Ready for the second part of the chronology of the Highlander franchise, which is actually the third movie called Final Dimension. Now, if we're looking at this, so the second movie is like at the very end. It might be like it's the last movie, and then there's like an animated series afterwards. So we'll get to that someday. So for now, this takes place shortly thereafter the first movie, and if you remember from the end of the first movie, he like won. There are no more immortals. He is like at one with all creatures in the universe, and now he can like breed, and he's with Brenda, I think was her name. And I want you to take all that and sprinkle a whole lot of bullshit all over that. Because well, we start the third movie in Japan, right? So Connor does like a recap of the first, like a very short recap of the first movie. He essentially tells us that he was an immortal. He was born in Scotland in like the 1400s, I think is when he was born. Because I think Duncan, we'll get to with the TV series, is the 1600s. He's like 200 years younger. It's something like that. It might be 13 to 1400s or 14 to 1500. I don't know. It's somewhere like that. I don't remember exactly, but anyway, what's important to remember is that he was like a Scottish warrior, and that he was killed during a war, but then we found out that he's immortal. And then he was trained by Ramirez, and he had like his lover, and then the Krugen killed like Ramirez and raped his wife. And then, all the way, and then he just like, there was like not the quickening, what's it called? The Gathering. Then there was like the Gathering where all the immortals like were moving to New York to like kill each other off, and the last two were the Krugen and Connor, with the help of his modern day girlfriend, was able to kill him and receive all the powers of all the immortals. All right, so this movie takes place after that, right? We have a whole scene at the end where he's talking about how, he's whatever with the whole universe. Okay, so we get that recap, and then it's like, and then Connor's recalling this, but he says like, okay, so after Scotland and everything that happened there, I went to Japan to meet with a sorcerer. This is not like this. No joke. This is not like, oh, he's a sorcerer because that's what you call a crazy guy who lives in the mountains. No. This motherfucker straight up has like illusion magic. Like not like he's playing like a card game and he's like, what card are you thinking? Queen of Spades. Papa, there it is. No, like straight up makes like, what's that spell in Dungeons & Dragons? Mere self. He can create like copies of himself to help fight. He can like change the background. He can like make a sword look like a stick. He has straight up fucking illusion magic. And so Connor goes to train with him, and he trains him in the art. And this is where Connor learns how to use a katana, which is like his main weapon of choice from the first movie, guys. That's all we got so far. Instead of like the fucking Scottish claymore, because he's Scottish. So instead of that, he's got a katana. So the katana, he gets trained in the katana. We get like a montage. They talk about Khan. Khan is like the most powerful immortal at the time, I guess, at least in Asia, because Nakano, this immortal sorcerer who can literally cast illusion magic. That's fucking so good. He's training him to fight him, essentially, right? But he's got, so finally Connor's able to like, they do some like Jedi training where like he covers Connor's eyes and has him use like the quickening to like sense where Nakano is and where like stuff is, so he can like cut gourds and like they have this whole fun thing. And meanwhile we see Khan like searching for Nakano like all over the place, like riding on his horse, and he's got two immortal homies with him. So the three of them are searching for Nakano. And the Khan guy's a pretty bad dude, right? It's like the Krugen all over again. Anyway, so some time goes by, and then Nakano's like, I have nothing left to teach you. Cut off my head so you can gain the powers of my like illusion magic. Because you know like a little bit, but you to truly understand like how to be like an illusion sorcerer, he was cut off my head. And Connor like refuses because he's like a good guy and he's he wants to be friends and all that stuff, which is a mistake, I would say. But anyway, so time goes by, and then finally Khan tracks them down. He comes and Nakano senses him. He's like, Connor, you got to go right now and you got to flee. Trust me, you're not ready to fight this guy. And so Connor like kind of slips out of there, and then Nakano and Khan like go back and forth, and then Khan's about to like fight him, but then Connor comes up and like attacks him from behind, but then he gets juked pretty hard and like stabbed and whatnot. And then Nakano like gets Connor to get up and flee again, and gets in the way because Con wants to kill them both. He gets in the way of Con by creating like an illusion of like 3 of him, and then the 3 of him fight like the 3, like Con and his 2 homies, and then they beat him, and then he cuts off his head, and then the head of like Nakano says some cryptic bullshit, and then obviously Con absorbs all his powers, but at the same time the whole mountain like collapses on them, so Connor's barely able to get out of like a cave before the whole mountain like collapses on top of Con and his 2 homies who are immortal, so they're gonna be okay. But they're just stuck under a fucking mountain, which is like one way to handle things. We then go to like the modern times, and where there's like a Japanese power plant or something. They have like a Tesla coil, which was confusing, but it just seems like the people who made this movie were like science bullshit. And then there's this sexy like blonde chick, and she looks so familiar. Like it might be Rebecca Romaine Stamos. I'm not sure. I didn't look up the casting on this, but she looks so fucking familiar, and she's like this blonde bombshell. So a major improvement in like bangable chicks from the first movie. And so she's there because she's like an archaeologist or something, and there's like some shady shit going on, and this Japanese corporation is trying to like mine or like run like a power plant. I wasn't exactly sure what was going on with that. Anyway, but she's there to like check something out, and then it's like meanwhile underneath in like the basement of this place, this security guard, like the power kind of like gets shady, and he sees like a wall moving, so he heads over to it, and then he gets like murked immediately. And then Con and his homies roll out, and they're like, and he tells one of them, like, go find that fucking Highlander for making me sit here for like the last 600 years. I don't know. I'm pissed. And then he goes off, and then their guy's like, what about me? And Con gives him like a look, and he's like, no. And then Con cuts his head off and goes, rah, and like absorbs his power, and then like the quickening does the whole thing with like lightning everywhere and like shutting down the power and causing all sorts of problems. We then switch back over to Connor, or we switch over to Connor for the first time in the modern era, like 1994, I think is what the date I saw. And he's riding around in like the Sahara Desert with like his quote unquote son, Johnny, I want to say, and then all of a sudden Connor looks up and he sees all this shit in the sky, which is like the quickening lightning stuff. It's like it's gotten this far, like it's like spreading out, and he's like, huh, that's interesting, because, and then he kind of thinks to himself, he's like, I thought I killed everybody. And then he's like, oh, it's Con, I sense him. Oh shit, there's more immortals. So I guess just like, what happened to like being at one with the universe and Brenda and stuff? And you're like, and then he did mention that he could have kids. So I was like, oh, he must have had kids. But then we get a shot. So then at this point, we're going back and forth a lot. So then we go back to like the Japanese center, and the hot blonde chick is like getting more information from like her Japanese sidekick character with glasses, like the nerd-chan. And they're talking about like New York, and they're talking about this what happened here. So it seems like the stuff with Con happened after, like before she arrived, even though it was like after she arrived. But anyway, so they go down and they find like an old katana, and the guy's like, wow, this is a great replica. It's from like 600 years ago or 500 years ago. And then she's doing like some research on it, and she's like, it's not a replica, it's real. Like, how the fuck is it here in this mountain? Oh, and they also talk about Nakano, because like the myth of Nakano, the sorcerer who lived in the mountain, is like perpetuated over these hundreds of years, because I guess he was around for a while being like a crazy warlock or whatever. Anyway, this takes us, okay, and then we switch back to Connor, and he's talking to some jabroni, and he's like, hey man, take care of Jonathan for me, I gotta go take care of some stuff. And then the guy's like, I thought you were done with all that shit. And he's like, so did I, but I guess not, so I gotta go. And then he has like a little hug out with his son. He's like, hey man, you're in charge here, take care of this place. And we find out that he's not actually his son, he's like his adopted son, and that Johnny knows, or Jonathan or whatever, he knows about it, but whatever. And so then Connor is like, I gotta head back to the place where the gathering takes place, which is New York City for some reason. So then he flies back to New York, and I'm not doing everything like exactly in order of the movie, I'm just kind of recalling like the different, because it jumps around so much here, back and forth. Anyway, so then Connor is like walking around in like a sketchy alley in like I assume Harlem, because he gets attacked by like a gang of black dudes, and it's like New York in the 90s, so that would be the safe assumption. Anyway, they shoot him and then run off. Okay. And then he's like in a hospital, and they're like, blah, 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 like the doctor and the police and all this stuff are arguing, and then he like sits up and starts like fighting with the doctor and stuff. And so they sedate him, and then they drag him down into like, it looked like the morgue at first, and I'm like, he's not dead, he literally just woke up. And you're not pulling bullets out of him or anything? I don't know. They take him somewhere, and then he like opens his eyes to wake up. Connor wakes up, and this like hospital is like a forensic hospital or something. Like, I'm confused because he's chained to a bed. Like, this dude comes in with like bullet wounds. He wakes up, he fights a little bit, and so they sedate him, and then they put him in like the psych ward behind bars. Like, not even not even actual like psych ward. Like, he's a prisoner, like a forensic ward, like forensic psychiatric ward. So he's chained to the bed. He's got like they're in a cage. There's a bunch of like crazy people just like hanging out. He makes friends with one of them, who then puts on like a Napoleonic like paper hat and then starts like a revolution. So that Connor can be a sneakopotamus out of there. Meanwhile, Khan's little homie, he shows up nearby the hospital, and eventually they bump into each other, and they have like a little fight in this like laundry room looking thing, and Connor is able to disarm him and then cut off his head, because there can be only one, right? And then he gets like his lightning magic and powers up and whatnot, and then Khan, who's off doing other bullshit, he senses it, right? They're all in like New York at this point, and it's snowing and it's nice. Connor then sneaks on out of there and heads home. I'm trying to think of something else. Oh, so then we again it jumps back around and forth between like Khan, Connor, and the girl, which I haven't caught her name yet. But so then she's back in Japan still, and she's like investigating stuff and looking into stuff, and then she's gonna take like this discovery of like the sword and some other stuff that she found in this cavern that Khan was like trapped in, because obviously has like stuff from like MacLeod too, right? Some like Scottish stuff that shouldn't be there, which is interesting, and she's gonna bring it back to New York. Connor. Oh, and then the police. We get introduced to this new police officer, and he is super into he's convinced Nash is responsible for the beheadings before, because remember there was like the black friend, and then there was the Krugen, and then there was the guy in like the parking lot. So there was like he's like a mass murderer, right? According to the police, he's cut off 3 people's head, and this guy's convinced it's Nash. And so now they have this new beheading, and it's like the same MO and everything, and this guy is like, I know exactly who did this. And so then Connor as Nash is like going back to his old apartment that he still maintains in New York, and we find out it's been 8 years since the previous movie, or since the first movie. So then he's walking up to his like loft or his penthouse apartment or whatever, and then the cop shows up. He's like, Nash, and he's like, what's up? And he's like, I know you did this. And Nash is like, it's late, officer, I'm going to bed. And I'll get you, Nash, I swear to God. And he's like, yeah. So he gets upstairs, he's like unpacking stuff, he's like, welcome back, Connor MacLeod. And then he turns the TV on and he sees the girl, and he's like, huh. And she's talking about this exhibition that she's back in New York, and she's putting on like an exhibition, of like the stuff she found and like the ancient Japanese stuff and yada 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 yada. And then he gets like, then we go back in time, right, to like the France, and they're right before the French Revolution, and he's like hanging out, and he meets this redheaded woman who is the same woman, right? And it's not like an immortal. She's not an immortal. At first I was like, oh, is she going to be an immortal too? But no, she just looks exactly the same. So clearly she's a descendant of this other woman. But it's played by the same actress, right? But she's got red hair instead. And so obviously he gets down and fucks her. And but before we get to that point, he gets introduced to her, and they like flirt and stuff. And then we go back to Khan, I think is next, and he is like walking down the street in New York, and this guy tries to do like 3-card Monte on him, but he uses like his illusion magic to defeat him. And then one of the guys goes up to like fight him, and then Khan does some like weird thing with like his glasses or something, and the guy freaks out and runs away. He then goes to like a whorehouse or something, and then he fucks this like chubby Asian woman. So good for him. And then it like zooms in on a picture of Jesus Christ in the background while they're fucking, and I'm like, I don't understand. So she's probably Filipino, to be honest. But anyway, at that point, what happens next? Oh, then we go back to the woman next, I think. And wait, hold on. I guess the order doesn't matter. Anyway, so then we go back to the woman, and she's talking to like her research assistant about at the museum in New York, at the Met or whatever. And they're talking about the patches of like clothes that she found, which are from Connor MacLeod, from the clan MacLeod. And then she tells the story, like there's a written story about a man who like thought he died, and then he woke up and he had like unusual powers, and he was outcast from the clan, and the clan eventually got destroyed. But then like parts of his like clan, because they have like the clan motif or whatever, they wear their like kilts and stuff, and they have like the little symbol, which is like a scarf or whatever. I don't know exactly what it's called. Anyway, so they found pieces of that in like Japan, like in this hold, and so she's curious about that. And there's like a Connor McLeod who is registered as like previously owning a business in New York that is now owned by like Nash, right? Obviously, we know it's all the same guy, but she doesn't. And so she's gonna like investigate that. So she's putting in some stuff to like find out information about him and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, like Khan shows up and he's like, "Oh, hello, what is this place called?" And she's like, "It's a museum." And he's very scared, obviously. And then he uses some illusion magic and like taunts her and stuff. And then he finds some stuff about Connor McLeod in like a fax that she gets. And she's like, "Ooh," and he's like, "Ooh, don't worry, I'll take care of him." And then he like leaves and does like an illusion of like the museum being set on fire or something. It was very odd. And then she's like, "Huh," and so she runs off. I'm trying to remember what happens next with Connor. So he deals with that, and then he ends up going to like somewhere, like maybe his like store. Like Rachel's not there anymore. Maybe she's dead. I don't know. She didn't look that old in the previous. Maybe she just went off and got some Cabana boys with all the money and whatnot. Anyway, he's like back in his. I think he's back in his stores. He's somewhere, and he's like having more remembrance about the girl's like ancestor. And so obviously, and this is where we get them like fooling around and riding horses and fucking and all this stuff. And then some guy comes to summon him for the French Revolution has begun in Paris, and so he's got to go. And he's like, okay. And then we find out that she's actually British, and that he's like, you need to go back to England before things are gonna get real crazy here. And she's like, oh, I don't want to. I want to be with you. And he's like, don't worry. And she's like, I'm never gonna see you again. I'm so sad. Whatever. And then we come back to the present, and the present woman, the blonde lady, she runs up, she like bumps into Nash, and she's like, "You're Nash." And he's like, "What are you doing? Following me?" And she's like, "Tee hee." And he's like, "Get out of here." And she's like, "I need to know about Connor McLeod." And he's like, "Look in a phone book." And so they go back and forth like that for a little bit, because like Nash or / Connor doesn't have any time for her bullshit. Plus it's making him feel a certain way because he banged like her ancestor like 300 years ago or something. And then Khan shows up, and they banter a little bit about him being trapped for 400 years and all that stuff and whatever. And so then they start fighting, and they have a pretty good ow, fuck. Sorry, I like slammed the console on my finger while driving, like the middle console. Anyway, it's not like locking right. There we go. Okay. So they have like a fun sword fight. They go back and forth, and they both like climb up on these things, and they're like riding rails at each other. It's hard to describe because it is so ridiculous, but like in the best way possible. So, so it's super fun and super awesome. And then eventually, Connor gets stabbed. And the guy is like, there can be only one, and he goes to strike Connor down, and then Connor like blocks it with his sword, and then his sword shatters. And this is like the magic sword he got from like the wizard in the mountain. And then there's like something happens, like there's some ghouly magic stuff, and then for some reason, and I don't know, I was having a hard time tracking exactly what's going on, but then Khan's like, I'll see you later, Connor McLeod. Maybe his sword broke too, and so yeah, maybe his sword broke too. I know Connor's did because we see it later, just the hilt. So yeah, his sword must have broke too. So the swords break, and then he's like, and then he transforms into like an eagle and flies off, or not an eagle, some sort of like raptor style bird. Maybe it was an eagle, which is interesting because it's like, well, I know he has illusion magic, but does he have like polymorph magic too? I guess he does. Or maybe the illusion magic is so powerful or something. I don't know. Anyway, so he flies off, and then Connor gets up, and like, then we hear like the police arrive because it's that guy, because you know there was like a light show when the swords broke, and so he's like outside the building for some reason, like the cop that wants to arrest him. And so he comes in, and then like Connor pushes the girl against the wall, and he's like, you didn't see shit, now you better stop, and you better avoid any of this shit ever again, and don't ever come find me again, or you're gonna be in danger. And then he runs off, and then she's about to follow him again because she's like a nerd with his presence. And then the police officer shows up and arrests her. And so back at the police station, he's like interrogating her, and she's like, I don't know nothing. And he's like, let me tell you a story. We used to have a woman who worked with us on occasion, right, which is Brenda. And then at some point we found her dead in Scotland from like a car accident or something. Like she was splattered on the road, and that guy Nash, he just walked away. So he's not what you think, and he's a dangerous man, and you should stay away. And she's like, he said the same thing. Dun dun dun. At this point, Connor heads home, and he has a recollection of the French Revolution some more. We spent a little time on this. Essentially, he's in prison for going against the king as being part of the revolution, and they're going to cut off his head with a guillotine, which would be a big sad times, and we know it doesn't happen because if he loses his head, he's dead. So anyway, what happens instead is one of the guys in his like prison with him, knocks him out, and pretends to be him, so he loses his head. And then the girl that he likes didn't go back to England. She came to Paris to see him get his head cut off, and then she's like, no. And then later on in the movie, we get the rest of that. So conclusion is that later on he shows up to like her estate because she's like a wealthy lady. I don't know if he's in England or Paris at this point. It looks like Paris, or not Paris necessarily, but France. And she has like moved on. She's married and had a kid and whatnot. So he watches for a little bit and then smiles and leaves. All right, so going back. So after we get that scene, we get a little shot of a knocking on the door. And the knocking on the door is, I never caught her name, the blonde lady from the present. And she's like, I know who you are, McLeod. And he's like, okie dokie. Anyway. And so then he invites her in, and she's looking at all his like paraphernalia and whatnot. And he gets a call, and it's a call with an Alaskan flight to Scotland, because he's going to go back there and try to reforge his sword, right? Because I don't know if I mentioned this in my previous review, but in the first Highlander movie, there's like a point where he's like a blacksmith. Like when he gets exiled from the Clan MacLeod, he might have been a blacksmith before, might have been training or whatnot, but when he's living with his lady friend, his wife, he's like blacksmithing. That's how he's like paying for stuff and whatnot. So he knows how to do it. And then he got trained on blacksmithing at the beginning of this movie in terms of like forging like a katana, right? So he knows how to do it. So he's gonna head out there. The lady like, listens in. They have like a chit chat. He tries to distract her with sex, and she's like, hell no, for now. We get a pretty steamy scene later. It's fantastic. And so she goes off to like study and think about like sword. So then we get like a kind of like juxtaposition montage looking thing where he's like trying to craft the sword and he's failing, and like the metal's not working, or it's just not doing what it needs to do. And then she's like looking up sword techniques for doing katanas. It's very good. It's very good like movie making, because it's like we don't need like someone being like, I am going to go back and reforge the sword. We just see him doing it. It's like the show don't tell. And then we see her like looking up katana stuff, and we're like, oh, okay, that's what he's trying to do. And then at some point she knocks something over while she's like studying, and she picks it up, and it's the metal that the sorcerer guy used to form the katana that Connor used at the very beginning, or that used that like the sword that just got destroyed, right? So it's another one of those. It's like the whatever metal, the special magic metal, I guess. And so then he's like all frustrated, sitting around in Scotland, hanging out, being a satapotamus. And then she rolls up and she's like, hey, what's up, big fella? Because, you know, she knows about the MacLeod estates that got destroyed and whatever. And so she tracks him down very easily, I guess. And then she gives him the medal, and he's like, hell yeah. And then like then we get a montage, but it's not like it's not like an action montage. It's like it plays like soft Scottish music. Like if you look up like Celtic music, and it's like oh da 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 da, right? So it's like that. It just shows him like practicing sword fighting and rowing and like checking out old places where like he used to spend time with like his wife and Ramirez. Ramirez doesn't really show up in this part, but he thinks about that and thinks about times, and it's all good. And then at some point he finishes the sword, and they're standing there, and then they start kissing, and then we get like a pretty long sex scene, and this chick's banging. Like again, she's like a white woman, so like I don't know about her face and whatnot, and it's like she's pretty, right? But I'm not into white people or white chicks at all. So but she's got a rockin' bod, like definitely some nice perky tits and stuff, and we see all of it, but it's like shrouded in darkness. It's that very 90s like having sex in the dark kind of situation where it's like artistic pornography. It's instead of just straight up porn, but they're like getting after it, man. Like it is sensual. Like it is on the level of some of these like erotic visual novels that like exist. Like I was like, damn, this is pretty good. I could see like a teenager finding this in like the 90s and being like, hell yeah, here we go. Anyway, meanwhile, Khan is like in Connor's place, like looking around and breaking things and stealing stuff, and just being an asshole, right? He's not doing it like he's not like the Krugen where he's like he's more subtle. He's just kind of walking around. He like opens up a Fabergé egg and sees like a diamond in there and takes that and then knocks it, and he's like, oopsies. And then he gets that voicemail. Someone calls, and it's Johnny. He's calling. He's on a flight from Marrakesh to New York to hang out with his dad, right? And so he's like, oh, okay. So Khan's going to go kidnap the son, obviously. And so then we go back, and we're back in Scotland, and at a pub, blonde lady and Connor are just like smoochies. And then he gets a call, and it's from like the guy he left in charge of Johnny. And he's like, the fuck are you in Scotland, man? Your son's coming out. Remember we planned this? And Connor's like, oh, my dick got to my brain. I totally forgot my son was coming to visit me in New York. And so then he gives something. No, that doesn't happen yet. So then him and they both fly back to Newark. Like we just see him. So then we're at the airport and Johnny's there. This is like the next day, and he's by himself. And he's like, "Oh yeah, my dad's picking me up." And it's like cool. And then we see Connor trying to get through like customs, and he's like very nervous and he's pushing ahead. And then he looks up and he sees Con walking on like the same like towards Johnny, and Johnny's walking towards him. And then Con like uses illusion magic to turn into Connor. And he's like, "Fuck!" So then he makes a run for it. But at the same time, the police like found out that he's like coming back like as Nash, and so they arrest him. And they're like threatening him and saying all this shit. And I don't understand the police stuff at all, besides just being like a temporary impediment to like him being able to do some things. Because this lieutenant is just like, "I'm going to get you." And then at some point, they're just like, "We got nothing on this guy. We have to let him go." And the lieutenant's like, "I'll get you someday. Get this guy the fuck out of here." And that's like the end of him for this story. So I guess we'll see if he shows up in like a future movie or what. But okay, sure. Why not? Anyway, so then Connor is unable. So then Con gets Johnny into a car, and then drives him off. And then he just does a lot of like this part's like bizarre because it's just like him doing like illusions. Like he's like driving his car, like he's gonna crash into a plane, and then the plane's just an illusion, and then the car's on fire, but that's just an illusion. And like the illusions have like a semblance of like physicality to them when it's required. So it's like this magic is like super powerful because it's just like whatever the fuck he wants it to be, whenever he wants it to be. And so we get like that bizarre scene kind of juxtaposed with Connor being like interrogated. Anyway, eventually he gets home with his lady friend, and then he gets a call from Con, and it's like, "Meet me here at this time if you want to see your son." And then he kisses like his girlfriend and tells her like he loves her, and then gives her something, and then he heads off to like this factory, and we get like a Terminator 2 style like factory battle, foundry battle. And so he gets in there and he sees Johnny with Con, but Johnny's just an illusion, and then Con's just an illusion. So he follows him around, and then there's a lot of like illusion fighting while regular fighting. Like Con pretends to be the lady friend at some point, and then he like makes an illusion like walkway that Connor almost falls down from, and then finally they start fighting, and at some point Connor like cuts him in half, but it's just an illusion. And you know we get like it's like rad metal music with like fighting for the most part. Some of it's kind of silly like that, like there's a couple breaks, but then at the end of the day, of course, our boy Connor ends up getting him and killing him, and there can be only one, and then lightning, and he's laying there like all. It's not as like radical as the first movie, even though this is supposedly like now he's killed. Now there's no more immortals but Connor, right? Quote unquote. There's literally like a whole TV series that we're gonna pop into next. So whatever. But then he's then Johnny runs up and they like hug it out, and then we get like the outro where he's like walking back around to Scotland, and he's like lighting a candle for his wife, and he's talking about how like beautiful it is here and how wonderful it is and how life's good, that he's with this other girl now and he's in love again, and then his son, and everyone's getting along. And then we get a shot of them just like driving through the Highlands, and just everything's doing great. And then credits roll, and right before the credits roll, we see like the quickening. There's like his old Highlander sword that says McLeod on it that's stuck in the ground where he lights the candle for his wife. Before, I mean, he did it in the church before, but I guess he like decided this was a better option. So, or maybe he's just here, so now he can do it, right? I don't know. And then we see like some quickening magic stuff moving through the sword. So I don't know what that's supposed to tell us. There's obviously more after this, so maybe that's what I'm going to assume that's what is implied, is that like, oh, the quickening is still out there and it's still infecting people and causing like immortality and whatnot. And this movie takes place after like this. So this is like the third movie, I think, that was made. So the second movie like reveals a lot of stuff that we're not going to get to till we get to that movie. So we might just miss some of that lore until we get there. And it's going to be like after the TV series and after the second TV series and after like 2 more movies. It's like the last thing before we get into like the futuristic stuff. But anyway, thanks for coming along on my journey here. Go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and then in 2 weeks we'll get started. I think it's 2 weeks. I can't remember my schedule that I have set up, but in a couple weeks we will get going, or maybe next week, the Highlander series, and we're gonna do those season by season because there's like 24 episodes per season, so I don't want to have like an 85-hour long video on this fucking thing. Let's do season by season, and I'll try to sum them up as quickly as possible, which should be easy for like an 80s show. I mean, each episode's like roughly an hour, and this is like in the 90s, 80s. I think it came out in the 90s. I think I started watching it as soon as it came out. About they had less commercials, so it's really going to be running up to like 50 minutes. But anyway, go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.